All right, 1 second. All right. All right. Hi, everybody. Um, okay. This means nothing right now. Dismiss. Let me go here. Um, so, like I said, we're just waiting for the judge to come on, and I hope he hurry up and comes up because he suggested this time. So welcome everybody on X, everybody on YouTube. Please share. Everybody on X right now, can you share out this space and DM everyone that you have in your DMs, message this space and retweet this space, all that good stuff. Um, and I'll put a couple of things in the jumbotron. Those are a couple of things that we're going to touch on because today's conversation: are we headed for World War III? Of course, hashtag Israel Palestine under attack. Palestine been under attack from Israel. Now Israel seeing that they're under attack from Palestinians, but I think we're headed for another war, and this unrest that's going on is more like a proxy war. But the purpose of this space today is going to be more historical context. Because if you want to talk about what's going on, yeah, people could talk about, well, what did they bomb today, or what did the president say, or what country is siding with who. That's just real time news. But this isn't nothing new. So I wonder, why is this um, attack amongst each other, the Palestinians and Israel, why is this more of a bigger issue now, where what they're doing now has been going on for decades, and the rivalry or the tension between the two has been going on for centuries. So we need to bring this into a more of historical context, and bring it forward and figure out, okay, what does this mean for the United States? What does this mean for Britain? What does this mean for the Western versus the East? Are we headed for World War III? I think so. And they're using that small section of the world as an excuse. So I'm not saying that I'm siding with one side over another, but I'm not going to sit up here and say I stand with Israel. I'm not going to sit up here and say, oh, I'm pro-Palestinian, because it's not really, quote unquote, my fight. However, both sides have dirty hands. That is a fact, meaning the government. And you have the innocent people, women, children, and men, caught in the middle. So, like I said, I'm just waiting for the judge to come up. Um, he needs to hurry up. I'm not trying to sit up here and keep waiting, because I told him he knows the time. He knows the time. I don't want to hear, oh, I thought it was 2 my time. No, 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern. So give me a second. Uh, 1 second. It's a judge logging. Hold on. All right. I knocked him off when I called him the first time, so he's logging on. It always takes him a minute. I kind of figure I was doing that. Uh, so yeah. So he's going to be coming on, and of course, every Tuesday, Judge Joe Brown does a Twitter space. I'm the one that facilitates it, get it together, whatever, whatever. Please share this space. Of course, you can request to come up. And when he comes on, more people come in because he has a larger following than I do. And yes, CC Keys, Family Tree, Reinhardt on YouTube. Yes, this is on Twitter as well. So I'm streaming from both. But all my X is really X, formerly known as Twitter. Please retweet this thing. Mario on Twitter, he has been on this since day one. So the attacks, Gaza attacked Israel on October 7th, my birthday out of all days, right? And Mario on Twitter, he's been holding spaces around the clock, really good spaces, but they're only talking about what is happening now in breaking news, what is going on. And there are a lot of people that are on his space speaking that are in Gaza and that are in Israel right now. So, I do want to acknowledge him because his spaces, I think they go on for probably 15 hours straight. And I listen to his spaces than I do the mainstream media news. I like to come on Twitter now and X now and get my news and this is one of the things why I appreciate that Elon Musk had purchased Twitter, turned it into X, because we have a space where we could actually be objective with what is going on. So, yeah. Oh, you're a Libra too, Cece. Great. Okay, yours is the 12th. Well, happy birthday. Um, so yeah, so we're just waiting for the judge to come on. I have a feeling that this conversation is going to take multiple turns because, of course, I want to bring in the Black aspect. Like, what does this mean for Black Americans? Should we care? Definitely got to talk about the Zionists because I put in a jumbotron. You have a lot of, they look like the Orthodox Jews. They were pro-Palestinians. They don't support the Zionist Jews, and it is a difference because I don't really support them either. But they hold a lot of power. When we talk about the Rothschilds, honey, I'm going there today. I'm going all the way back there. I'm going back to World War One. That was funded, World War I and II, by the Rothschilds, intentionally knew that their own people was going to be slaughtered in Germany. And they intentionally did that so that they can get their own independent state, which we see now as Israel. So, Zionists, they will sacrifice their own to gain more power and position in this world. Let's not get that confused. And on YouTube, this is on Judge Joe Brown YouTube channel on YouTube. That's like a burner YouTube channel. So yeah, like the spaces like Mario space and stuff like that, they're not talking about the historical aspect. They kind of don't even want you to elaborate on the word Zionist, but why not, right? Okay, so you want to talk about what is going on right now on the ground. Well, they're bombing shit. That's what's going on. They're bombing stuff. People are being kidnapped. People are being held hostage. People are being killed on both sides. That's what's going on. But I want to go back into time, honey, because why are we here? Why are we here? What they call Israel now, what did it look like in 1960, in 1950, in 1940, in 1850, and going all the way back to biblical times? Got to talk about Mayor Eric Adams. He did a press conference yesterday in New York City. He stand with Israel 10 toes down, of course, because everybody else hates you. So you need the Jews, the powerful Jews in New York, to back you if you want to run for mayor again. But he on that bullshit too, because at the same time, you have Palestinians protesting in Times Square, right? And he's telling them, basically not calling them a hate group, but he's not even siding with them, but those are your constituents who voted for you. We got to talk about the protests in London. England/Britain or whatever, Britain plays a vital part as to why it's such unrest in Israel. They're the ones, they colonized that spot. They control that. Because at one point, didn't the Britain Empire control the Suez Canal? And Egypt got their ass up out of there. And they're the ones who assisted the Jews out of World War II. They put them there because nobody else in the world wanted them, right? So now all the Palestinians in London protesting in the streets heavy. So it's a lot of hands in the pot here that is responsible for what is going on today. Iran is backing the Palestinians. They should. So is Russia, even though they're being quiet. So is China, even though they're being quiet. But China said, we are not backing Israel. But yeah, we do trade with you. We trade technology, silk rolls, all that shit. But we ain't backing you. But we need to figure this out because at the end of the day, it's about money. It's a business. And I do want to mention Armageddon because now you have to bring religion into it. So again, we're waiting for the judge. His Wi-Fi is like Pony Express from 1865. And I don't know why, because it's already 19 minutes in. And it's been a minute since he did a Twitter space, so I'm not in a rush today. But I'm glad that, how many people in here? 9, 10? I'm glad that the people that are here. So please retweet this space. There are, CC, okay. There are a lot of, got you streaming, yes. There are people putting up video and images of, children being, dead children being carried by their parents or whatever. Some of that are old footage, so sometimes you don't know what's current, what's not. But, listen, the problem that I do have with media is everybody wants attention, so they're willing to put any and everything out there, no matter how graphic it is. But where were you 10 months ago? Do you really think that this just came to a head for the first time now since October 7th of 2023? Every month, people are killed by the hands of Israeli soldiers, Palestinians. Children are tortured. Children are kidnapped. Every month. So when we talk about discrimination, it was just last month, Israelis, Jews, they forcefully told all the Africans who are Jewish to get the hell up out of Israel, deported them forcefully. So let's not sit up here and be on Israel bandwagon as if they're so innocent, because they got a lot of damn blood on their hands when we're talking about racism, xenophobia, killing or whatnot, warmongers, all that's the same as the United States. The same as the United States, same as Russia, same as any other government entity. So yeah. I don't know what is taking him so long. I don't have time for this. He's probably he needs to go out. Let me text him, go out and come back in. Mm, mm, mm. Hi, Daisy Girl on YouTube. Yeah. Hi, Daisy Girl on YouTube. So anybody want to request to come up and talk now? You can while we wait for him to come on. One thing about me, I am a stickler for time. I always like to be on time, actually ahead of time. Being on time for me is late. So I get antsy when people are not on time. But if anybody want to request to come up to speak now, please do so. And I'll bring you right up. And I need to share out this space again. Let's see. Invite me a DM. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. I was listening to NPR cover this earlier and looking forward to this space. Thank you. Training with purpose. Let's see. And thank you guys for liking and tweeting it. I have always been a huge fan of Black exploitation, blah, blah, blah. All right. Oh, I thought somebody requested. I don't know. Okay, here we go. Hi. Was it David? David? You got unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, David. I
What's
don't know
going
that
on?
was you.
Yo, I'm gonna say this real quick because I'm gonna try to make this fast. So if you said is the question, are we headed for World War III?
Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of listened to what you were saying, cutting in and out. I mean, I don't think so. I think that this probably can be contained to that particular area, and as long as Iran doesn't officially get into it, which I don't think they will, I don't think it's going to really be that big of an issue. What Israel is doing in that area, everybody knows what they're doing, and nobody has the issue with it. So I don't think if they get a little bit more aggressive than what they've currently been doing, I don't think it's going to be an issue. It's just interesting to me with as much military aid, foreign military aid goes to Israel, as advanced as their military was supposed to be, and as much surveillance as they have over that area, how they were able to experience what they experienced this weekend, and for some reason their intelligence forces didn't know what was going on. So that's just to me something that's kind of unusual for that to happen. But the world knows what Israel is doing in that part of the world. They're fine with it. So I definitely don't think that it'll spin out of control because it'll just be kind of a little bit more what they already have going on.
I think that when it came out that Egypt did give them a warning. I think they knew that it was a potential attack coming, allowed it to come because now they have an excuse to have us, the United States military, come near and give them more force, and Britain. A lot of times people set something up so they could maneuver in the bigger picture. It's a bigger picture that is happening. And honestly, it could be the western part of the world that used Israel to get into a proxy war with Russia or Iran or whoever. But I think that they're new. All that intelligence they have, they knew, and I think they intentionally just allowed it to happen. Just like they intentionally allowed the Nazis to um, do what they did, via the Holocaust to their own people.
Yeah, I mean, so speaking about their intelligence, yeah, it's unusual, like I said before, that as advanced as their military is supposedly supposed to be, and they have that area of Gaza under extreme surveillance, that they were able to launch that kind of attack and that well coordinated, coming from those different areas, and they had no idea what was going on until it was already taking place with that many people. So it wasn't like they sent a team of
Mhm.
5 people over. This was a large amount of fighters coming in different directions, and then all of a sudden it was as if they got caught with their pants down. That's really not their standard. So it's just very
Mhm.
unusual that that happened. But I don't think it's going to turn into World War III, because I think it'll just be contained to that area. And again, I think Israel's only concern is that how will it affect people's perception of us and whether or not they want to do business with us based on how we're treating these people. But the majority of the world has said, we don't care how you treat those people, we'll still do business with you. And so I think that's pretty much going to go along. The majority of the world doesn't care how they treat those people, those Palestinians in that area, right? Because they've been doing it to them for almost over a decade, and nobody cares. So I don't think they're going to care that they're
Mhm.
killing them, because they've been killing them. That's not anything new. It's just they
Right.
putting the cameras on it now, but they've been killing those people. Standing of living there is extremely low. They don't have a lot of water. Uh, the life expectancy there is very low. The majority of the population is very young because of the conditions that they live in under. So everybody knows what's going on over there. It's just now the cameras are there. But we saw this with Ukraine. After about a month of them doing it, people's focus will go to something else because it just won't be the hot story anymore.
Right, which is a problem, because we are just treating this like this is a trending story, and it's kind of sad because we're making it seem like, oh, this is something new. And listen, this goes on monthly or quarterly over
Yeah.
there, and it's serious. And I think that when we see the Palestinians marching the way they're doing in London and in Times Square, because they know this has been going on over and over and over again. Because the Israelis, they have a stronger military. They have more. Bought. They have more of the land. They took over that piece of that country over there. But they did get that financial backing, Palestinians, from Iran. So because they just got tired of being stomped on by Israeli military. But Ali Stare, did you want to say something? And I don't know where the fuck the judge is at, and I hate that. I hate that.
Hey, good afternoon, Dana. How you doing?
Good.
Okay. Well, the root of this, and I'm gonna have this I'm gonna have a Twitter chat tomorrow at 10:30. I posted up there. I hope you join tomorrow at 10:30, and we're gonna call my subject's basically Zionism. Um, to me, I think it's white supremacy. It really is, because if you look at the root of the history of Zionism, it was basically this this type of cult identity movement to establish their own land and their own identity. And basically, if you want to look at the history, is that they were trying to start it originally in Uganda back in 1903, and at first it passed. But then a group of Russians, Zionist Russians, said, no, we shouldn't do that, for the purposes that if we did start it one, you potentially could create a bit of a racial hostility between whites and African Americans, kind of like they were doing, with South Africa back in the day, and other white-owned colonial nations in Africa. So they waited until the wars that were going on, that were financed by the Rothschilds and the Wahlbergs in World War I and World War II, and they justified it, based on their interpretation of the Talmud. You see, the Zionists only follow the Talmud, while Judaism, they follow the Torah. You're not supposed to have a state of Israel under the Torah. And so they're justifying the Talmud as the reason why to start this so-called Israeli state in Palestine, which, by the way, if you go back through biblical times, it was called Canaan. And so, and yes, Israel. First of all, Israel, I consider it's not only it's an apartheid state. It's a white supremacist state. Because they treat blacks horribly, just as bad as they do Palestinians, especially in Tel Aviv, where you have black Ethiopian Jews living in slum areas and everything else, and called derogatory things, and some of them are just begging them to go back. That some of these people are basically begging them wanting to go back to Ethiopia because they're tired of the racial problems going on in Israel. So yeah, I'm gonna say this: I do back the Palestinians. I do kind of back, the right to self-defense on this because they're being slaughtered and everything. This is genocide going on out there. So, again, tomorrow I'm gonna have an event at 10:30. We're going to talk about Zionism, white supremacy. Is it fact or fiction? So hopefully you guys will join tomorrow at 10:30. So I'm gonna land my plane briefly. If you have anything to say or have any questions, I'll answer it for you. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it. All right, now I see the judge. 30 minutes, y'all. Like, you need stronger Wi-Fi.
This isn't Wi-Fi. This is something else. Anyway, it's...
I sent you a request to be a co-host. Did it come up?
Okay. All right, it just popped up.
Okay. Yeah, just tap it.
Gotcha.
Okay, it says now your co-host.
It's
so I put
tedious.
It's very tedious, but I don't know. I think you should get another phone. You need a burner.
Phone, it's not Wi-Fi. It's something else going on here. Anyway, I won't belabor the point, but here we go.
Are we headed for World War III?
No, we're not.
I think so, but go ahead.
I think what we are getting is more hype for people to think that we will fall in line with the rest of the crowd and we will rally around the flag of the cause and we will be distracted from the incompetence, the criminality, and the rip-offs that are being done while this confusion is cluttering up everyone's attention. I think that's what this is. And one thing we need to worry about is what's happening in the Balkans again. We've got a repeat of Sarajevo that started World War I. We've got that with Serbia. And nobody's paying a bit of attention while we're focused on Ukraine, which to me looks like an effort by the Biden family to bribe its way out of the long, multi-page long, multi-count long organized crime indictment that was returned against them and published in early November 2020 that the press has singularly tried to smother. And that fits in right well with Article 6 of the Constitution, where ratified treaties are part of the supreme law of the land. And according to the treaty that was negotiated in 1999 by Bill Clinton and ratified by the Senate, when somebody in the U.S. or Ukraine is indicted, the other entity is supposed to take that person into custody, detain them, and extradite them back to the requesting country. Now, that's not going to happen right now for obvious political reasons, but as soon as he gets out of office, that's what's supposed to happen under the Constitution, Article 6. So he's already admitted he engaged in bribery. You can hear that on a January 17, 2017 thing he does on C-SPAN, where he brags about bribing the Ukrainians with the withhold. Well, let's see, it was $14 billion loan guarantee that they wanted. And they weren't going to get it if they didn't get rid of the guy that was prosecuting his son and certain others. So it's a long, sordid story. But that thing with Serbia, that is really, really one of the dangerous ones. And you're hardly hearing anything about it, even though they are exchanging shots. We've got a regional conflict that is essentially internal. The Gaza Strip once was under the control of Egypt. It's now under the control of Israel. And that article, for example, I sent you relative to the Chinese position that there should be two separate political entities rather than just one controlling that area that is so incendiary in terms of religious and social significance. And the historical aspect of it is very long. It's gone back more than 1,000 years, 1,500 to be closer to the point, where one side protected the other side from persecution by the Christians, and then suddenly they get turned on somewhere at the end of World War II. And there is an element of what goes around comes around. If you read Menachem Begin's own autobiography, where he boasts of all of the Arab and Islamic hospitals and schools that he blew up, uh, burnt down, and all of the people that he personally assassinated in a campaign he characterized as one of terror, so that the Israelis could get the area, you can see that there was ample provocation that goes back. Well, it's within my lifetime and probably a bunch of others, and a good percentage would be of the population has a vivid living memory of what it was about. So there is a lot of animosity that's going to have to be worked out. And maybe the People's Republic of China has a very wise proposal. In other words, let's make it two places instead of just one, because these folk are not going to get along. And it's not too cool what's going on over there. But I don't think it's going to be World War III, because it's somewhat limited. You've got uh, an interesting geographic situation that's out there. You have, if you looked at a map, at the top of the map, you'd see Lebanon. To its right, you'd see Syria at the top of that map. And then you'd see Golan Heights, Nazareth, Haifa, and then you drop down into the West Bank, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and then to the east, you'd have Jordan. And then you drop down until you get to Egypt, and right on the coast is a strip that extends out of Egypt, and it goes up into Israel, and that's the Gaza Strip. And you've got various and sundry entities. Hamas, you've got there, and then you've got Hezbollah up north, and you've got a displaced group that used to represent most of the area at one point in time. And it's chaos and confusion. And quite frankly, my analysis of the foreign policy of most of Western Europe and the United States and everybody else is to keep the area destabilized so it isn't too dangerous, but a destabilized area is inherently dangerous. And we don't have in this country political continuity to be able to manage such a thing. So there's a real live mess over there. It'll probably be a spate of killing and another 40 or 50 years, 50, 60 years of intense animosity as a result. So I doubt it's going to go World War III.
Well, I think when we talked about this briefly yesterday, And when the reason why I'm saying World War III, you know, a couple other people echoing that question throughout media, social media, but you mentioned something proxy because Iran is backing the Palestinians, and of course, United States back Israel, and then you have Britain, and then you have China, and you have Russia, right? They're not
China
claiming
and
this,
Russia are backing, to an extent, Iran as a proxy.
right?
See, the
So,
conflict is between China, Russia, and the United States primarily, but there's another thing. China has invested so much money in the United States that it does not want to see its economic interest damaged by damaging the United States too much. And in fact, they
and they
stabilize.
invested in Israel too,
No, well, but Israel's small. Look at the
right?
size of it. If you backed off from its religious significance, why would anybody want it? There's no significant mineral wealth there. There's no significant oil there. It's an idea. It's not particularly strategically located, but it's an idea. It's the center of a lot of competing religious ideologies over the last several millennia. So it got that way because once anciently, several thousand years ago, it wasn't all desert. It was a land of milk and honey, but nature
Mm-hmm.
did what it did. And now it's a lot of scorpions, lizards, snakes, and whatever outside of certain small urban areas. And the population of the entire region is not as great as some of the metropolitan areas in the United States, the Euro Union, or in Russia, for that matter. Certainly not in China. So we have the equivalent of two American cities, large American cities, say New York versus Chicago, going at it, surrounded by a much larger world. Now, of course, all of the rest of the powers, if they were just chock stupid, could get drug into it, but they don't have to. And the other thing is the United States, quite frankly, between what it has dumped in Ukraine, what it is trying to dump secretly into Serbia, but not really, and what it is dumped into Israel, that it needs to dump more of in Israel if it's to keep up with its policy, just isn't there. Right now, the depletion to the U.S. military's ammunition stocks is going to take a minimum of 5 years to start making a dent in terms of replacement needs, at least 10, 15, maybe 20 years. That's one of the reasons right now, if you go try and buy ammunition, it's very difficult to find the stuff because too much of the ammunition manufacturing capacity of the U.S. is now devoted to replacing diminished military stocks for our side that got chopped down by 20 years of active war over in the sand pile. Now, what with Ukraine stuck in here and now this, it's going down real rapidly. And then there are those more complex munitions that take a long time to build up, all of the missile stocks, the discarding sabot, either tungsten cord or uranium, depleted uranium that the tanks shoot and that we have out of the weapons even on the M2, M3 Bradley series. So we are losing a lot. It will take a long time to replace it. Under the Obama administration, most of the arsenals got shut down, and we've about run out of the civilian market or manufacturing side of things when it comes to being able to make it. We have one wing of F-22s after the Obama administration foolishly shut that manufacturing line down. We've got a second-rate fighter plane, the F-35, that's really just an attack bomber, and it's compromised because the Chinese can wreck the computer direction of most of them at their will, ground them, crash them, or disable them. And we're trusting the Chinese to not do that again. So that's bad. the F-14 Tomcat that was a hell of a fighter plane on the guise of advancing social programs in the military and elsewhere. After they got upgraded with new engines for the first time and really hit their stride, just a few months after that expense, they got grounded because we supposedly didn't have money to keep them up. That was during the Obama administration, too. So now we got a problem. We need 2 more nuclear aircraft carriers. The latest one, the Ford, is not really fully operational because of some problems it's had. It's kept it from being operational for the last 8 years while they tried to work them out on a limited budget. And we've got a real live mess. That aircraft carrier was supposed to fill in for one that got detached from the South China Sea, which has left that open to a mess. And that was supposed to be the cover for the troop withdrawal in Afghanistan, but it didn't. So now we are really shortchanged. Everybody's overworked. The Navy's under recruited. They aren't interested in fighting. They're interested in people getting converted because they want to transition to something else, which is not what the Defense Department's supposed to be about. By the way, for matter of perspective, to give somebody that set of surgeries during a 6-year period of enlistment, most 4 years of it would be involved in the surgeries and the rehabilitation and recovery. And for just the first stages of that surgery process, we could buy us 2 Rhino mine resistant vehicles fully equipped that would be able to protect anywhere from 11 to 20 some soldiers who would ride in them, but their lives are not as important as somebody doing whatever his hot fantasy might be to him or herself. So we've got all kinds of messes. We are trying to convert our military to something that is a social experiment. Meanwhile, in January 2021, the People's Republic of China implemented a man up program in its military and civilian population. Russia has already done that. And now we got a real live mess going on. Our military is under recruited. They've got a problem right now. They wrote white papers that they try to suppress, but they wrote them 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And they say we can make you physically strong, but we can't make you mentally tough because the country's been so emasculated that nobody's trying to teach the elements of manhood that you would ordinarily expect in a recruit by the time they joined up. And now they're in the crazy position that instead of going through boot camp, basic training, and being tested to see if you have been brought up to physical par, you got to pass that test before you are allowed to enlist. So the whole premises of the thing has gotten really ridiculous. And we are running out of ammunition, running out of resources, running out of personnel. And a large percentage of our personnel in the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marine Corps Air Arms are taking furloughs so they can operate as pilots for the Israeli military. So we got a mess.
Right. It sounds like a mess. So basically, we're not headed towards World War III. However, because our military is such a mess, this is more so about business. And a lot of times, particularly the United States, we are the present day Rome. Our military is getting weakened, and China, Russia, Iran, their military is getting stronger to where you don't really have to go to war, sort of say, because the business is somewhat chipping away and taking over your nation. And do you get what I'm saying?
It's not so much business, it's an agenda. It's also this thing of one of the best ways to engender support, national support, is to start a war or be involved in a war where everybody comes together, they rally around the flag. In other words, it's them and us, and the differences amongst the membership of us sort of get hidden, and we are all Americans. So we have to fight this outside threat. So one of the typical political devices since antiquity is to generate an outside threat. Even Rome used to do it. When they'd have disruption at home and unrest, they'd start a war. So the Roman people unified behind their legions. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. Now, if the country wanted to do something, it seems to me, they'd go over there and pull the plug on the whole damn thing and say, look,
Right.
let's do what China's talking about. Let's separate this whole thing. We need two political entities over there. So one isn't set there exploited. I had a neighbor in Los Angeles at a place I was staying in when I was doing my show for the first while. And he was a Palestinian. He's a loyal American now. He said, I became wealthy 3 times. The first 2 times I became wealthy, the Israelis just came in and raided my bank accounts, took everything, and said, you're getting too strong, so we're going to bring you down to size. He said it was absolutely ridiculous. He said he loved his country now, America. He said, but he thought the policy that America had toward what was going on over in Palestine was absolutely ridiculous. By the way, it has consequences. To raise money, what happened to George Floyd up there? That cupcake shop and some other places, they were allegedly infiltrated by the Palestinian mob. Why? To raise money. And one of the other things is you can see it on the video. He passes a bogus $20 bill, which is supposed to have been issued in the neighborhood by that same criminal organization. So it spreads over here. You see, there are peripheral things and consequences that the public is unaware of generally.
So I see a couple of speakers up here. I'm gonna get to the speakers. Anybody want a request to come up, please do so. And I want to shift this conversation going back into time, right? Because this isn't nothing new that is going on that we see in the state of Israel against the Israelis and the Palestinians. Well, now we're talking about Muslim and Jews, and that goes back all the way centuries to biblical times. And then now we have what we have today. And I also want to touch on Zionist Jews and how they are Orthodox Jews, I know I'm tearing up that word, in New York that are pro-Palestinian because they know that the Zionists are the ones that do a lot of, dirty stuff or whatever. But I want to bring up the Rothschilds when it comes to funding wars and how they kind of knew what was going to happen to their Jewish people that were in Germany and Poland, but they sacrificed them to get to the independent state of Israel. And then I also want to bring into the fold of Britain because Times Square in London, you have a large pro-Palestinian rallies, right? Britain did control the Suez Canal at one point and certain parts of what we see now, Israel. They helped assisted the Jews from the Holocaust to go there, but they had to also, but the Palestinians were there, whatever. So I want to bring a historical context to why we have what we have today. Kat, and then you, like I said, if you want to request to come up, please do so. Kasha, you requested. You want to say something? Keisha, sorry, Keisha.
Hey Dana, thanks for
Hey.
letting me come up. Interesting conversation he just showed down. Yeah, hi. I'm really I I'm not too familiar with every single aspect of what's going on with Israel and Palestine. I was actually talking to Judge Brown about this the other day. My personal opinion is that the people who genuinely have lived certain levels of pain and suffering will always advocate for peace. And I don't think there's ever reason for innocent children, especially to suffer, innocent people in general. Um, Although there's, a lot going on either side. But yeah, it seems you guys are going on to the next topic. So I'll wait to see what you have to
Well,
say
it's
about
the
that.
same topic because I know if people come up, it may not be about, the historical aspect of it, but even if people request to come up and you want to talk about what's happening right now or whatever, that's okay. It's just that when the judge, he elaborates on things, nobody in other spaces and even in the mainstream media is talking about the history before it was even named Israel. And that is very important, because I'm not going to sit up. And then it seems like our country here, especially with mainstream media, is trying to force us to be pro-Israel. Well, I'm not going to do that. And I'm necessarily not going to be pro-Palestinian, even though I can sympathize a little bit more with them, right? And maybe it's because my grandchildren are Muslim. But at the same time, I want to also bring, of course, the Black aspect, because have any of those groups were pro-Black anything? So, but nobody isn't talking about the history of it. And if we don't understand the history, we cannot fully understand what is going on today. And why those people there, particularly Palestinians, are fed up, And so, yeah, so Keisha, so go ahead and ask the question or say you want to say Ali start, and then Judge kind of take us back into time.
Well, my problem is right now that a lot of people are complaining about, what's going on in Israel and Palestine, and it's awful. It's absolutely disgusting how many innocent people are suffering the consequences of what's going on there and losing their lives. And it's terrible. It should never happen. My problem is that the people in the United States and in the Western world almost are, dare I say, clinically retarded, because we in this section of the world have people who are grazing across our border in droves, who are coming over for the purposes of raping and killing and trafficking our children and our citizens, and doing egregious things as well in our own country. But we're constantly focused on other people and telling them how to solve their problems. But in our own country, we're just allowing evil to run rampant. And men, especially, I would think to myself, like, where are all the real men in this country who's not just going to sit behind the computer screen and complain about the evil in the other countries of the world, but actually get up and do something in their own country, which would facilitate peace in other places as well. So, my problem is not whether people want to support one side or the other, because I mean, someone who's Israeli or Palestinian will obviously probably support one side or the other. But why are we not facilitating that very safety in our own country, where some of the egregious crimes are going on? And we might not be being bombed and things like that, but we have a lot going on here that needs to be fixed. And I just feel it's hypocritical and very weak-minded.
Judge, are you still there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Ali,
Look,
start.
on that.
Oh, okay.
I got the same Orlando Award in the Watergate in D.C. 20 some years ago that Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin got. And they got that award because the two of them, for Israel and Egypt, with the impetus of Saudi Arabia being involved in the whole thing, arrived at some sane resolution of the difficulty. So now Egypt and Israel act almost like allies. You've got a need for sanity to interject itself, but you see, there's always a use for some place like Israel with the problems it's having with its surrounding Arabic foes. It's a laboratory. The U.S. government, the military, the Army, and the Marine Corps had a big to do 50 some years ago about whether its tanks were in fact adequate to deal with the tanks the Soviet Union was providing to its surrogates. They found out that on an M60 tank, the armor was slightly deficient compared to, say, a Centurion in certain aspects and superior in others. And the Soviets found out that their rounds couldn't necessarily penetrate the frontal armor of an M60. It could on an M48, but if it penetrated either, they had a hydraulic fluid that crews used to call cherry juice because it was red, thin, and it looked like cherry juice. Nominally inert, when it sprayed out at high pressure after a hit, it became very volatile and it tended to detonate, which would destroy the whole tank and the crew in one big boom. So, as a result of that, the United States government found the hydraulic fluid substitute that wasn't so incendiary. Things like that go on, and that's one of the hidden things. You have tactics that you develop, you have weapons that have been developed and not tested in combat, you have soldiers that have need of underground apprenticeships. In other words, who can handle being under fire, who's cool, who really has the ability to say, follow me, and people will follow them. And this is what we're going to do. And what they determine to be done is, in fact, the correct thing to do, or at least they learn. So everybody uses these little flare ups for stuff that is not obvious to the press, or at least to the writers, and certainly not to the general public. So right now, people are scared of the U.S. military. Why? Because we've had 20 years for people to have developed their skills as officers and non-coms based on what's going on over there, or went on over there in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then they had a senior cadre of non-coms and officers who got their taste of fire in Gulf War One. So the U.S. probably has the largest segment of its population who've been combat tested, approved, and learned from the experience, and just about everybody else in the world is rookies. That's one of the things you're looking at in Ukraine right now. They're kind of learning their skill on the job. They've got it by the book, they've got practice, but the Russians are learning what it feels like to be shot at, how to deal with troops who are getting shot at, and how to deal with officers who have to take the responsibility. And those who were great for what went on in peacetime may not be that good for when it gets hot and heavy. Same thing with Ukraine. So you're starting to see things change around when um, this factor of this is my homeland, I'm trying to protect it, versus, well, there's a point here and I'm part of this military and I'm rallying around our flag. So you're the enemy and we got to do what we got to do. But that's what's going on over there in the Middle East. And nobody is taking charge and coming up with the initiative and putting a foot down and saying, it ain't gonna be that way. Now we're gonna settle down, because the bottom line is that the United States, Russia, and China could go over there and absolutely impose peace. But China has the sense enough to say, hey, let them work it out. Everybody's got to work it out. Europe, China, the US worked it out. We had our Civil War 150, 160 years ago. Europe had 2,000 years worth of internecine conflict. And China certainly was the scene of a whole lot of internal war for several thousand years. So you got to work these things out. So, yeah,
Why why
while we're
why
working.
why are people I guess it's just human nature, but why are people, men and women, they're so, oh my God, it's the innocent people, babies being killed. And it's like, wait a minute, don't you understand that this has been going on for centuries, that this has been going on right under your nose where we live at? When you're talking about war and unrest, that innocent people are going to be slaughtered.
Well, look at it this way. A whole lot of babies died during the Civil War. A whole lot of slave babies died during the preceding period of slavery, during the Civil War and afterwards. A whole lot of German babies died when the RAF and the USAAF bombed the hell out of them in World War II. A whole lot of Japanese babies died when they got burned alive when the USAAF conducted their firebomb raids on Japan. a whole lot of people that lived in the Nam got slaughtered because of what the USAF and the USMC and the USA, the Army, were doing, and the USN was doing during the Nam. So it comes with the territory. So practice what you preach. When we back off of what we do, so can they. We talk about we have precision munitions where we can do a surgical strike, and literally, if we got somebody we want to take out, we don't have to blow up the whole block. We can literally fly a cruise missile through the third window on the seventh floor and get the guy because that's his office. But sometimes that doesn't work right. So we have collateral damage. We had a president in Obama, the drone ranger he was known as, who had the official position that in his discretion as president of the United States, he could order someone assassinated or murdered if he thought it was in the best interest of the country, and deprive somebody of life, liberty, etc., without due process of law on his own signature or on his own dictate. So people think that's crazy, but I actually read the court transcript on that, and the judge was absolutely astonished. But the U.S. government took that position. So now we've got it at home. And as a matter of fact, the subject of that particular proceeding was a request for an injunction by a father who was born in Detroit, Michigan. He was an American citizen. His son was the subject in question. The son was grown, born in America, in Detroit, a native U.S. citizen. And the Obama administration didn't like some of the things he was saying about the Middle East. So the court enjoined him from assassinating this American citizen. But the Obama administration went ahead and did it anyway. And they killed the man's son, who was the grown man, and they killed the man's grandson, who was a child. They did it in separate incidents, 4 hours apart. Nobody said anything about that. So we'll kill our own children if some clown decides it's in what he perceives to be the country's best interest.
Ali Star, did you want to say something before we move on to the next?
Yes. Um, ever since Israel has been in existence, they have done some very horrible things when it comes to policy, not just how they deal with the Palestinians, but how they have done internationally when they supported apartheid in South Africa, Rhodesia, and Namibia. In fact, they gave whole lot of armed ammunition to the old white supremacist regimes in those countries to suppress black folks and everything else. And they've never been afraid of black people. I don't understand why so many of us black folks are, these black leaders are so holy and now supporting a country that support oppression of black people in these various countries, especially what they're doing to them Ethiopian Jews out there, them black Jews and everything else, sterilizing them and everything else. And just recently, there were black Jews who are from West Africa are being beaten up and thrown out of their countries and put it in, in trucks and everything to be sent back. So this fascination of these politicians supporting Israel and everything else is just really dumbfounded. I just wish they had the balls to stand up. But if they did, they'll be labeled anti-Semite by the ADL, which, by the way, ADL was the reason why they started their organization was because Leo Frank, tried to accuse a black man of committing a crime against a white child and everything else, but then they found out it was really him, and they lynched him, and they used that, for their own movement and everything else. So it's just baffling, Judge, that these black politicians would just sell out to their own people like that, to these group of people that oppress black people.
Okay, I got a homework assignment for you. I published it on Twitter.
Yes.
About a week and a half ago. If you scroll through my timeline, you can find it. I put out a list of the Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, and I also put out a list of the LGBT Congressional Caucus, LGBTQIA plus Congressional Caucus. They call it the Equality Caucus. And you will see that there is a distinct overlap between the members of the Black Caucus and that. You will also see something very interesting. I have said on Twitter, now X, and all sorts of places, that one of our problems with reparations is that our Black representatives are not doing a damn thing about it. It's their position. That's why they're supposedly elected, to represent the interest of their constituents, but they're not. Now, the Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, has a reparations committee. Can you give me some description of what you think the chairman of that committee is like?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Guess what they have, or who they have as chairman of the Black Caucus's reparations committee?
Is it Corey? It's supposed to be Corey Bush. Bush.
No, it's not. Not you're talking about Booker.
Not Booker. Not Booker.
His name is Steve Cohen.
Steve Cohen.
He is
Okay,
the
yeah.
congressman for the 9th district in Memphis.
Yes.
He's gay. He's white. He's Jewish.
Oh, okay.
That's the chairman of the Black Caucus's reparations committee. His signature piece of legislation over the last 19 years is a binding resolution a binding resolution that requires the congressional cafeteria to serve nothing but paper straws. The same one that, when we're talking about reparations, sponsored after that debacle 4.5 years ago, when Congress wasted 2 weeks discussing whether or not to have a study of reparations. 2 weeks later, he honchoed the Gay Reparations Act, which was $58 million on an open-ended agreement to compensate gay couples who had been deprived of insurance benefits. Now, you get the connection with why we don't get much? I mean, not saying they're bad, but do you think the other side would have, let's say, somebody black who ran something that their particular ethnic group might be interested in, honchoing or being the chairperson for a committee in charge of protecting that group? No, it wouldn't happen.
I see that he is on the committee of reparations. You're right. Wow. Unbelievable.
See how that works?
Yeah, I see how it works.
Take a look.
I see the trick bag. Listen, I see the trick bag out of it, because they always put Bush out there first and everything else. She's a representative out in St. Louis. They always put her out there first to talk about it and everything else. But then when I looked at everything else, I see that Steve Cohen is the head of it. Wow.
Yeah.
I do want to bring the black aspect into it.
See, in other words,
you can hear me, right?
Okay, let's take what you got right now.
Me?
Okay,
Judge.
We had a Conyers, the congressman in 1997.
I can hear Judge George Brown. I was hearing Judge.
But can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear both of you. Yeah.
Okay. But the judge asked the judge if he can hear me. I don't think he can hear me.
Introduced an
Wait,
act
ask him if he can hear
me. Judge?
Yes.
Can you hear Dana?
I can't hear Dana.
Okay, that's the problem. Okay.
Tell him to drop
Okay,
down and come back
Congressman
up
Conyers
because
in
he can't hear me.
1997
Hey,
introduced.
Judge.
Yes.
Yeah, she wants you to drop down. So
Okay,
so
I'll
we
hold
can
on.
hear
Let
you.
me make this point first before I forget it.
Okay, go for it.
Okay.
1997, John Conyers introduced a proposed piece of legislation. It got tabled. It got brought back up again and again and keeps getting tabled because it's not what it seemed. It was for gay rights. Now, that's okay. That's good politics on their behalf. But he was supposed to be a preeminent black congressman. Now, what happened is, remember when Jesse Smollett faked that lynching up
Yeah,
in Chicago? Well, he had met with Kamala Harris earlier within that 24-hour period. She's his in-law aunt through her sister.
yes,
And he had just met with Cory Booker. So immediately upon that stage thing with the noose, that, by the way, the evidence in the criminal trial showed him putting around his own neck on a security cam, they introduced an anti-lynch bill, but it was Conyers' original action with a new label on it. That didn't work. So they brought it up again and they got it through as the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill. That Emmett Till anti-lynch bill says nothing at all about lynching as far as it goes with black folk, but it did certain things. We all think of a lynching as when a mob goes after somebody and kills them. Well, they changed it so a mob was no longer necessary. One person could be guilty of a lynching. There did not have to be a killing. There could also be a kidnapping or severe injury from something like a beating. What they did introduce for the first time in the lexicon of federal law was a specification that sexual orientation became an actionable cause. So what you get out of that is, let's say, somebody who broke up with his girlfriend is in a club and he's feeling a little down, he's drinking, and something that he thinks is a hot young lady starts dancing with him. They start exchanging spit in the shadows, and then he notices that this thing he's been dancing with is getting a hard on. And he says, "What?" And he punches it in the jaw, splits its lip. That is now federal lynching that brings in the federal authorities. See, the thing that they do on the bait and switch has got a lot to do with other things, and it has a lot to do with what's going on with our reaction, what's happening over in Israel. These kind of things happen. Now, Israel has a right to its own integrity as a nation, but we cannot allow our elected officials to use this as a smokescreen to obscure all of the trash and garbage that they're letting go through, the things that they ought to be paying attention to that have to do with the quality of life, the safety in the streets, the economic prosperity of the country, and the military preparedness of our country. Those can't be sacrificed to allow them to create smokescreen after smokescreen for their own purposes. Now, I pass the mic. I'll drop down, Miss Dana.
All right. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. He still can't hear me. Can you wait? The judge can't hear me. All right. Wait a minute. He has to drop down and then I have to bring him back up. Tell him to drop down because I don't think he could hear me.
Hey, Judge, could you drop down?
Let's see. Move as co-host. Okay. And then where'd he go?
Yeah, he dropped down.
Okay. But I don't see him. I need to. Okay. Who is this? Oh, here we go.
He's back on.
Okay. Can you hear me, Judge?
I hear you. I just sent a request. You need to invite me in to be a co-host.
Yeah. Invite co-host. Okay, I just sent you a request. You got it?
Got it. All right.
Okay.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, it does. Mimi, I'm not bringing you up. I don't have time for you. Sorry. Anybody else want to request to come up, do so. So can we go back in time? Should we go back to World War I and talk about the Rothschilds funding those wars? Or should we go back to the Bible and then work our way up?
Well, let's go back there. If you read Exodus and you don't get too literal about it, you will see something that happens. You see the equivalent of modern ethnic cleansing as those who follow Moses leave Egypt going back to what is now Israel. That's not a healthy thing, and it's not pretty. There is one scene in there, one part in there, and they're talking about what is nominally a rebellion, because Moses orders the Levites, that's the priestly caste, to kill one person in every Hebrew tent for failing to obey his orders to exterminate this tribe. His own wife is from that tribe, and so are the spouses and in-laws of a lot of his followers, and they refuse. Now, there's a possibility he doesn't get to see the promised land because they assassinate him. That's neither here nor there. But by the time they get back to Israel, you've got factions in there that are fighting, and you do not get a unification until you get it under the house of David. But you've got another problem in here, in that most of the nomads in the area, whether they counted themselves Hebrew or anything else, and out of ancient Ur or Ur, which is 65 miles southeast of Baghdad now. And by the way, their clay tablets mention this chieftain Abraham specifically. And what winds up happening is you have what they call Semitic people. Right now, we hear it as somebody's being anti-Semitic. But you see, the tragedy of the whole thing is the people that were populating Israel, Palestine, etc., were Semitic. So were what we now call Arabs, Semitic. And it's interesting that they are at each other's throats trying to kill each other to see which one's version of paradise or heaven is correct. But in any event, what you have is a situation wherein you had so-called people of the book, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. The Muslims, Islam, controlled the Middle East for about 1,000 years. They gave sanctuary to the Jews that the Christians were hell bent on trying to kill. You paid your tax and you could worship as you chose. In El Andalus, now known as Spain and Portugal, Islam ran that place for close on to 1,000 years. And everybody was free, happy, and equal until Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492 took the place over, when the House of Seville and Savoy in unity overthrew the Islamic control of what is now Spain and Portugal. They didn't treat the Jewish population too well. But in any event, the Muslim world still offered them sanctuary. So we get a situation where you get the Nazis scapegoating the Jews, the persecutions that occurred, and also some fanatic followers of Islam who were very much aggrieved at the incursions that had been made into their authority in the Palestinian area. There were a lot of Jews who were in Great Britain who joined up with SAS, the commandos, the special boat force, also commandos, and they learned the art of killing. After the war was over, they kind of put a deserved guilt trip on Britain for not protecting them prior to the war. And they got a little under the table support. Now, Menachem Begin, the same one that entered into that agreement with Anwar Sadat to normalize relationships between Egypt and Israel, he wrote a book, and in it, I call it boasting, but he sets out the many schools that he bombed full of Palestinian children, the many hospitals he bombed and destroyed full of Palestinian patients, and all of the assassinations that he was personally responsible for. He called it his effort to apply the principles of terrorism to the political scene so that Israel could get free. I would suggest that the current occupants of Palestine have not forgotten that. And perhaps what they're into is just saying turnaround payback. You did it to us. That's how you got this area. So we use your own methods on yourself. You taught us. And speaking of stuff, we have a problem with revolutions around the world when it comes to the United States being able to hang in there long term and deal with them. And the weird thing about it is most of these countries that pull off those revolutions are these long-term insurgencies, like what's going on in Afghanistan, went on in the Nam, went on in Iraq. Guess who they modeled themselves on? The United States, because our so-called revolution back in the 18th century was the first modern revolution, and the methods that the colonists used to get rid of the crown, King George III, are the same ones everybody else still uses. So we might look to see the lessons that came out of that, and there are quite a few. And if we choose to do something about it, act like we've got some kind of sense and apply them to what's going on over there right now, and maybe you'd get some solutions and a bit of peace. But it's also a problem with that because, quite frankly, tension builds up hostility and aggression, and it's not displaced. So when you have a place like what's going, well, like the Middle East, where there is a flare up every now and then, it serves to release the level of tension going on around the world. So it focuses on that area, and it kind of keeps the peace elsewhere unless it just gets totally out of hand, which so far it hasn't in 70 some years because all of the conflagrations have been confined to the Middle East. So somebody needs to go over and get rational and get unemotional about it. But I passed the mic. That's a little history.
All right, let me do something. Can you please retweet this space? I just noticed something. You dropped down, you came back up, you're a co-host and you're speaking judge. But when I go to your profile, I don't see the round thing showing that you are in a space because that lets
Yeah, I've been pointing that out. This is shadow blocking.
Right. And it's a lot of shadow blocking. And I don't care if they say we don't do it. Twitter does it. That new CEO of X is doing it. YouTube, we know damn sure it's doing it. They do that. And the fact is that we're not talking about nothing controversial. He's just speaking the truth. And I guess the truth hurts because, yeah, there are Zionists that control these media entities and they're trying to paint a different narrative. Somebody just put that in the YouTube chat. ADL controls the narrative. Yeah. The Rothschild control Israel. Yes. So the fact is that, and they control media, especially here in the United States. So okay, do I see it now? No, I don't only see it now. So the fact is that I don't know why it's not showing that you're in a space so that more people won't come here and hear you talk about the truth and history. And listen, history is not controversial. History is history. They don't teach history anymore in schools because they don't want, if you understand history, you understand what's going on today and you understand what will eventually happen, right, in the future. They don't want you to know that.
Well,
and
yeah.
and you have to ask yourself why.
Well, speaking on what you're talking about,
So please retweet this space, guys.
That's why I tell you, please send me the link because I get people I don't follow me, and I get notifications of their Twitter spaces. But when you put one up, I can't find it unless you send me by text a forwarded link.
Right. King, what's your full name? King Daep or Crypto Day?
Yeah, that's what this touch on in terms of the Zionist thing. Like that's what like Kanye was exposing and everything about how they exploit us and everything and how they got all this control and they control all the like news media and everything like that. So I just wanted to add that in there because he was really speaking truth when he was speaking that.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, right? He was speaking truth, but it's funny though because you start speaking the truth when your life becoming inconvenienced by the same people who made you, helped you to be a billionaire. You were selected to be successful, and then when you wanted to be independent, they say no, Negro, and then you wanted to expose them, but you're doing business with them, right? So yeah, I mean, but at the same time, I don't sit up here and look to Kanye as being this revolution person because if they never mess with his money, he wouldn't have said shit.
True shit. I can agree to that. But also like the minister Louis Farrakhan, he been speaking on how the Jews operate too as well. It's some book thing that he been published and everything, like the blacks secret between the blacks and Jews and things of that nature. So our people been exposing this stuff as well. But yeah, I agree with you on that, sister.
Right. I'm glad you brought up Louis Farrakhan because when he was speaking fact, now the ADL and all those Zionist Jews was paying him as being what a racist and xenophobia, everything in the book. He's bad, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, he's just speaking the truth of what actually happened, what your people have been doing, like everybody else group of people, different tribes in Africa, Europeans, the Vikings, every Arabs, every single group of people, ethnicity, nationality have done that. So why are Jewish people trying to act like they're the only ones that don't do shit?
Facts, sister. But yeah, I land my plane. I appreciate the space. Appreciate you, Judge. Thank y'all. Be here.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, go ahead, Judge. Oh, go ahead, Ali. Sorry.
Yeah. What really is frustrating is that one of the major mistakes, and I think Judge is going to agree with me on this, is that the civil rights leaders allow these people to come in, and next you know they have hijacked every aspect of the civil rights movement, and even hijacked Black history, and they have rewritten it and everything else, which we know there's certain black people leaders that we could write about and say praises, but certain black leaders like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey, John Henry Clark, Oh, you're not supposed to talk about those people in high praises. Those were anti-Semitic black men and everything else. So we allow these people to come in our spaces like that, and next thing you know, they've hijacked it and everything else and took everything away from the black community. That's one of the great mistakes that the civil rights movement made back then.
Let me say something on that. I attended a lecture by Thurgood Marshall years and years ago when he broke it down. He had been involved in a series of events engineered by the NAACP around the country, where piece by piece they'd introduce this crumb, that crumb, where they could build a foundation for.
I don't hear you, Judge. Do
Wow.
you hear me?
God,
Okay.
something
Now,
came.
now I
I
hear
got
you.
interrupted. Okay.
Okay.
He talked about putting in a thing piece by piece where they'd lay the precedent so they could do something under the law to attack segregation. He said this is the way it worked. The Jewish population or Jewish leadership created the NAACP. Now, the NAACP, contrary to what some people want to put out about it, when you look at their official literature, they say there were 3 founders of the NAACP. I know it's listed as more now in various places, but this is officially NAACP, and I have to admit I'm a life member, have been for decades. Now, it says there was a Jewish woman, a Jewish man, and W.E.B. Du Bois who founded the NAACP. The purpose was this, and this is from Marshall. He said the Jews felt they were persecuted in America, but the theory was they should support the colored or Negro cause because if they could not do something to a black man, they certainly couldn't do it to a Jew. So Thurgood Marshall sat outside of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which had been sort of tabled. The way he came up with a theory to get civil rights was this. There were statutes to protect dogs. ASPCA, American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, had lobbied heavily, so there were cruelty to animal laws on the books. And his theory was if you couldn't do it to a dog, you couldn't do it to a Negro. That would get financed heavily because if you couldn't do it to a Negro, you couldn't do it to a Jew. And he said that alliance through the first part of the 20th century was there because we were surrogates for the Jewish cause, which is why you see the heavy involvement. You have the NAACP Image Awards, which, by the way, is a totally separate corporate entity from the NAACP. They were started by, that is, the Image Awards were started by the NAACP is an organization. But the difference is that for the Image Awards, which were set up to promote a positive image for the Negro, the colored, for black folk, to inspire them to do things, it was also a collaboration with the entertainment industry that was to a great extent financed and driven by the Jewish community. So now when you see an Image Award, there are 800 judges that can get involved. 400 of them have to be NAACP members, and the other 400 are supposed to be industry personnel. And that 400 does not have to have any membership in the NAACP. So essentially, since they are more organized, what happens is when an image award is given out, the recipient is somebody that's helped out the Hollywood industry more so than set a good example for the Black cause. So we have to understand that we get used as a surrogate quite often without us realizing it. Now, guess who has gotten more image awards than any other person? Steven Spielberg. Does that sound like that ought to be logical? No, it doesn't. Does that sound any more logical than gay, white, Jewish Steve Cohen from Memphis being chair of the Black Caucus's Reparations Committee?
I want to go to
I'm
Del,
not down
Keisha,
in it.
and
That's
Black
just
first.
astute politicking.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's astute
So,
stupidity on our part to willingly go along with being used and abused. I mean, I
Exactly.
guess since they've gotten
Mhm.
into it, I guess the other side looks at it, you know, Chuck, those Negroes are, did they call those people of color? I guess they like rough trade these days.
I want to go to Del,
Yeah,
Keisha,
pass the
and Black
mic.
first. Go ahead. You can hear me, Judge, right? Can you hear me? He can't hear me. Ask
Pass
the
the
judge if he
mic.
can hear me. Del, ask him if he can hear me.
Yeah. Judge, can you hear Dana?
Testing.
I hear
testing.
you.
Oh, he doesn't. Okay. Oh my God, what is going
I
on?
hear you
I
loud
think.
and clearly, but I can't hear Dana. Is she talking?
Yeah, he can't hear him. Yeah, tell him to drop
Oh,
down.
There we
And tell
go
him to drop
again.
down
It
again and
got
come back up.
interesting. So there, yeah.
Right. Tell him to drop down and come back up, Del.
me? Me
Yes.
to drop down? Oh,
No.
you want to drop down and come back?
I'll come back, so maybe I can hear Dana. All right, ciao.
Listen, honey. I'm like, and I don't want to sit up here and say Jewish. Then let me not say Jewish people, because it's a difference between Jewish people and the Zionists that control everything. The Zionists, honey, that control everything. Them. I need a word for them. The small hats. It's the small hats, honey, that's doing all this shadow banning. Here you go. And see. Invite the co-host. All right. I sent you an invite to co-host.
Yeah, I'll just kind of say a couple of things here. Yeah, people have to make that distinction between the Jewish people that are criminals, just like anybody else, and not just say that that's the entire race. That's nonsense. Just like every race is involved in crime, there are Jewish people that are involved in crime, just like everywhere else. What ends up happening, and like with the example for what's going on in Israel right now, there are criminals on both sides, the Palestinians and the Jewish people. A lot of the people that are getting shot up in the streets, these are innocent people that have nothing to do with the situation that criminals decided to do. And what most people don't understand when it comes to like a lot of these wars, if you follow the money, you're going to see certain people funding both sides and profiting off the innocent people getting murdered in the streets. And this is what people need to stop. Like, yes, somebody looks like it's the aggressor, but pay attention to it. But the most people that are victimized are the people getting killed, and nobody should be getting killed because criminals are deciding to make money.
I just want to say one thing. Okay, Judaism has nothing to do with race or ethnicity. It's a religion. Just like a black person can be a Muslim, or an Asian woman can become a Muslim, a white person can become a Muslim. It's a religion. Okay?
It's a religion, but within that religion, they discriminate against Black Jews.
Yes,
With
they
so,
do that.
so
Just
again,
like
it
they do.
goes back. It goes and wait, and then I have to go to Keisha because she was next. But it does go back to race, because I do see within the state of Israel, they only want people that look like them there. So that's a problem. and
Yes.
and a majority of people there are Jewish. So yes, it's a religion, but people even separate themselves for and go by what you look like to accept you in their quote unquote religion. Go ahead, Keisha, and then Black first.
Yeah, you mentioned before, and I agree with my dad. You really got to pay attention to what's going on because a lot of times people are funding both ends of it, and this is what we've seen consistently in the wars throughout history, where it seems like there's one side against the other, but there is in fact usually a party that is funding both sides. You see that with Switzerland in the past, I think it was. But nevertheless, you mentioned something about Kanye West and how he didn't expose until uh, you know, they messed with his money. But I mean, if we're being honest, there's a lot of people that don't truly know what's going on until something happens to them directly. I mean, if you look at what was done to him and his family, what they did to his children, and how they just completely separated him that way, and then how his handler came in and pretty much incapacitated him and forced him into an institution. Everybody kind of is blind to what's going on until something happens to them that really wakes them up to really understand what's happening. So, I mean, I don't really know what his connection is in other ways, but I think that he definitely has skin in the game at this point to expose some of the things that have been going on, especially after what's happened to his family. Um, as it regards to certain people not being able to, what you were mentioning about them being racist towards Black Jews. I'm not too familiar with that topic,
Oh
but
yeah, so America, they hide those articles when we talk about world news. That it was just right before what happened on October 7th. They had a massive deportation of all the African Jews, sending them back, and that and the African Jews they were coming there for a better life, the same way those Israelis are there in Israel. So yes, and that's been going on for decades. Only thing you gotta Google is the deportation of African Jews in Israel. Go ahead, Black first. But I do agree with you. Your point with Kanye West. That could be the case. A lot of people are blind to it at first. Go ahead, Black first.
Afternoon, Miss Dana. Afternoon, Judge, and those who are listening. Judge, I wanted to I agree with everything you have said. And I wanted to point out, and not going back too further, but the Belgian conference in 1885, because when I was reading the issues, um, the European Jews, and the gentleman is correct. Jews, to be Jewish is to have a religious destination. It's not ethnic. But I wanted to see if this fits in what you were saying. In the Belgian conference, when Europe divided Africa up, and we all know, well, I know, and I could be wrong, that actually Israel, Palestine is in Africa. They just divided it up. And so in the early 1900s, the idea of having a homeland was instituted with the European Jews right before World War I. And so my thing is, and like Ms. Dana said, there's a difference between Jewish people and the Zionists. And so the Zionists wanted the land. They wanted a homeland. And in the 40s, they were fighting, the Palestinians were fighting the European Jews, and correct me if I'm wrong, because they were questioning, why are all of these people coming here and they didn't look like them. They didn't have dark skin or brownish skin, or however you want to notate it. And so they've been fighting for a long time. And so when they wanted to establish a homeland, they picked Israel based upon their religion. So they started shipping out all of these European Jews to get out of Germany and parts of Europe to go into Israel. And so they took over. So my whole thing, and I agree with what you're saying, I think it started with the Belgian conference in 1885 when Europe said, we're going to divide up Africa. And they went in, all the nations of Europe went in to divide up Africa and to take Africa. Each African country has its own, because in study, the Europeans were fighting each other until they had, and I think Ms. Dana mentioned this, Europeans were fighting each other. They were enemies against each other. They've always been fighting each other. But when they had a common enemy, which was the African continent, they all came together because they wanted to exploit it for its riches. So I say it goes back to the Belgium conference, that these Zionists said, "Oh, okay, let's take Israel as being part of the African continent." And I'll land my plane there. And I enjoy both of y'all so much. I try to listen as much as I can. And again, thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to comment, Judge? His question, well, he's referring to Berlin.
I think you're right on point. I think it went back a bit further than that. I tell you where one impetus came from is in the 19th century. One of the strongest British prime ministers was a guy named Disraeli. He was raised Jewish and he converted over to Christianity, but he kept that mentality. So that started some things way back in the Victorian era, where England was at the height of its colonial activities. You know, the sun never set on the British Empire. Royal Navy ruled the waves.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And remember, Israel. If I remember, and your Judge, I wish I had your mind, but all this history I studied, Israel didn't become a state or a nation until after World War II in 1948.
That's right. And that's when some interesting things started happening.
Right.
Again, read Menachem Begin's autobiography. He clearly he lists every school he destroyed with the children in it, every hospital he blew up or burnt with the patients in it, and all of the Arab and Palestinian folks that he assassinated, or he set terrorist bombs that blew up train stations, bus stations, and shopping centers. So that's somebody that became a revered prime minister of Israel. So just read what he has to say about his methodologies, and you might get the sense that a lot of what's going on right now is just simple old time payback.
So just one more thing, and then I'm done. When you mentioned how the Jews control Hollywood and the NAACP would Du Bois left, and he exiled himself because he formed two things. He was there in Niagara Falls when he started the NAACP, and he left the NAACP, and then he also was a founder of one of the fraternity groups, and he got disgusted and he left and he never returned back to the United States. Well, in that aspect, if you look at the awards that they give out, best actress, best actor, you go back, that's Imhotep, which is considered the first multi-genius in Africa some 3,000 years ago. And when you said that they co-opted, and you're right about the SPCA and the Negroes, they co-opted everything African to move themselves, everything Black, to move themselves forward in this country. I mean, if you look at all the symbology, and if people know the symbology and they do the study, they did do that. And when you made that point, that just brought up in my mind how what you said, they co-opted everything to make themselves what they are in this country. They took it from us and then used it against us. And I'm done. Thank you so very much. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
One observation: the historical Imhotep, who became mythologized and they had temples to him, That's not 3,000 years ago. That's closer to 4,400 to 4,500 years ago. 4,500. You got to add another 1,500 years on top of it. He's supposed to have had a great deal to do with the first pyramids, not the big ones, Cheops and all of that, but the ones before that. And he was supposed to be a doctor, and he was a mason, and he was what later became known as a Renaissance man. In other words, he knew a lot about a lot of things. So yeah, Imhotep's a very interesting person.
I want to go to Mark, and then I need to make an announcement after that. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so when they talk about us going to World War III, it's as if we should cry about this group of people who've been in this country doing everything in their powers to undermine our people. Look, when I hear people say white supremacy, and because they control the media, they want your mind to be fixated on some Ku Klux Klan member. No, that white supremacist that you're talking about is this group that's over in Israel that stole their way into Israel. In especially these northern cities, and even down there where you are, Judge, where you got the what's those families, those guys down there that does all the development in Memphis, those big guys.
Shirley Bells, the
There
Forward
you go. There you go.
Corporation. Yeah, they just got an election here.
Yes.
And they're helped finance the top 6 people around here at the same amount of money.
Right. Now what's the other guy's name that covers up for them? The black guy. His father was in the civil rights movement. He has that CDFI bank. What is it? Willis, that boy Archie Willis, right? So I'm saying all this to say that they have been the oppressors, they have been the oppressive people, and it's just chickens coming home to roost with what's happening with them over there. I mean, we don't have a dog in the fight, but I mentioned A.W. Willis because in all that they do, they've always had this partnership between D9 and the Masons and Eastern Stars, the leadership, who has always worked alongside of them, those group of people, to destroy our people. And so we don't have tears for them. We don't have any tears for them. Fight your own fight. We're not going to be, uh, 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 you know, uh, embarrassed or I'm looking for another word. Anyway, we're not going to cry for them. We're not going to fight their fight. We're not going to put up all that. Uh, 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 all that stuff our people when something happened to France or happened to these other countries, and we put that stuff up on our Facebook pages. We're not doing none of that. These are the evil people of America. These are the group of people that when you look at this entertainment industry, you look at banking. Matter of fact, Judge, will you tell them how Dr. King came to Chicago thinking that he was fighting that Southern white man, only to find out that it was the Jewish community that were the slumlords in 1966 when he came to my neighborhood, North Lawndale, in 1966.
Okay.
And it was those Mason pastors, J.H. Jackson and all of them, along with the Irish, that got together and wanted to kill Dr. King because he was speaking out on what was happening to poor people in Chicago and across the country.
Well, I don't know about them trying to kill him. That comes a little later through J. Edgar Hoover and some stuff with that. But I do know, since I was there for that 1966, we had just come there as a delegation from UCLA. That was also 67. To do something about the situation with the University of Illinois campus at Chicago, where they had official discrimination. Black students were not permitted to go to the student store or student union except on certain days at certain hours. They weren't permitted to congregate in certain areas, nor patronize certain of the student cafeterias. So when we got there, Bernie Sanders was just getting out of jail. He ran a core chapter that was Congress for Racial Equality. White boys sitting up there with a whole bunch of black folk, apparently having a good time. Meanwhile, some months later, when King came, we were back there, and they had all these demonstrations, and Ms. Hillary Rodman, future Mrs. Hillary Clinton, and her parents were out there trying to maintain the segregated status and keep the Negroes out of their neighborhood. So I found that an interesting juxtaposition. But here, there's one other important point. And this is something that you need to understand. We keep thinking of what's happening to us as a matter of intentional desire to do harm. To get a proper perspective on why this problem with us is so ubiquitous, think about dogs. Some of us, I do, have always had a dog around. We like dogs. We're dog people. Some have cats. Some don't like cats. Some don't like dogs. If you contemplate that Jewish people, white people think of us as animals, and there are, just like there are dog lovers, there are nigger lovers, they used to call them, because they look at us as still subconsciously, they look at us as subhuman and some kind of animals, but some of them like us. So it's not necessarily that they're trying to do us some harm, just like dog lovers would not go out to try and harm dogs because it's, quote, inhumane, unquote, ASPCA type stuff. So what happens is the problem comes not from somebody looking at you as a target to do intentional harm to. It comes from looking at you as somehow vaguely subhuman, like a super gorilla or a super chimpanzee, a cute one that hangs on its trainer's shoulder, and it does all kinds of tricks and makes faces, and it's cute to look at. That's how we get a problem with this, where it's insidious. It's not so much somebody trying to do you some immediate harm. It's that the fact is we aren't considered quite human. And one of the reasons we aren't considered quite human is something that we Black people ought to see when we look at the Middle East. Now, these people, Hamas, are just young Palestinians. And what did they do? They decided their situation was intolerant. And what are they doing right now? And we have to understand that that same thing you're seeing right now with Hamas is what we used to have back in the 60s with Black folk. Well, I'm not advocating that anybody do this now because we just don't have the balls and nor the inclination, and it may not be appropriate, but H. Rap Brown, when he gave speeches to thousands of people at a time and had everybody standing on their chairs or seats, he'd pull out a book of matches and say, "Burn, baby, burn. You got it right here." And you see, I don't want to say minorities because there were some white people involved in this. SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. There were the Brown Berets for the Hispanics. There were the Native Americans, and there were the Asian Americans and Black folk, and it was power to the people. And that group back then had been embroiled in wars, World War I, World War II, Korea, and Nam was just getting thick, heavy, and ugly. And we were not unused to the idea of things burning down, whether it was the Luftwaffe, the Japanese Navy doing it or the U.S. Army, Air Force blowing something up. And there was a different perspective on it. Death was accepted as inevitable, and it was a question of how you went out rather than when you went out and everybody wasn't talking about, oh my God, somebody died, like they do now. So you have to understand there are these differences in perspective. Now, I'm a retired judge, and I'm not going to tell everybody, burn, baby, burn. I'm reporting on it historically. You can read between the lines, but I'm just giving you a historical, anecdotal report on history because to a great extent, I just happened to be there. And I'm telling you what went on.
So Judge, I just want to add this last part. And again, I still live in North Lawndale, which is the community that Dr. King came to for the End Slum campaign, where he came to find out that those very people that so-called was with the civil rights movement were the very people who were redlining our grandparents and great-grandparents, selling them homes under contract after they discriminated and redlined them, coming to their banks. They then would sell those homes to them under contract. They missed one payment. They take the home back from our grandparents and
Sure.
sell it to another black family.
Sure.
Well, let me add this last part, right? And so when it
I'm
comes
agreeing
to
with
them, we have no tears for them. We don't give a damn about them, and we don't care nothing about no black folks, no boule black folks that take orders and take their money. We don't care about them either, because a lot of them are partnered with them. If you look at this mass immigration movement in this country, and you pull the layers back, that whole Office of New Americans is backed by the Jewish Federation right here in Chicago. And Rahm Emanuel led the charge along with his brother, Ari Emanuel, who y'all saw him attack Kanye West. That's Barack Obama's ex-chief of staff's brother. Well, Rahm Emanuel was Barack Obama's chief of staff. His brother is the one that attacked Kanye West for speaking out. And so I'm saying to all of us as Black Americans, we don't have to have no fear of them. They ain't got no numbers. They don't know about it. They'll never, and they don't call us that stuff they call y'all in California, New York. They would never call us anti-Semitic. They're not gonna come out and speak against us because they know we'll come up in that Jewish Federation on their ass. They know we'll come to Skokie and Evanston to them neighborhoods where they live. You know what I'm saying? And do some anti-Semitic shit. So they keep quiet when it comes to us. You know, well, we the same ones when Laquan McDonald was killed and we tore Michigan Avenue up. And you know, I ain't gonna go too far. But anyway, when it comes to this immigration move, it is them that's behind this whole move, and it started here in Chicago. That's why we so abreast of what's happening. And so what's happening to them over in Israel is chickens coming home to roost. You know what I mean? Get over it. You know, we're not crying for you. Cry for your damn self.
Right. I want to make an
Say something
announcement.
on that. Let me say something on that. Yes, but with a qualification. The Jews are getting used right now themselves, and what that is there's a far more dangerous and insidious enemy of everybody, including them, and that's the LGBTQIA plus cult that is fronting the Jews off because there are many of them who are Jewish, like there are many of them who are black.
And that's what I was going to say. They one and the same, Judge. They one and the same.
No, I'm just saying, but there are a lot. Look at the black caucuses. That thing I posted a week and a half ago, and you will find that 2/3 of the members of the Black Caucus are members of the LGBTQ Equality Congressional Caucus. And you will find that it's not Jewish people, it's not Black people, it's not white people, it's a select cadre of each that is acting in unity with an impact way above what their numbers would suggest. Less than 7.5% of this country is into that. And most of them aren't part of or supporting that cult. You've got less than 0.5% of the country's population are trannies, a little less than 1% are lesbian, a little less than 1.5% are gay, and maybe you have 4.5% that swing both ways. So when you put them together, you get between 7 and 7.5% of the country's population. But they are influencing the country way out of proportion for their numbers, because 55 years ago they were dedicating themselves to taking over the communications industry, the entertainment aspect, the news aspect, and insinuating themselves into both parties quietly in one and noisily in the other, and generating a lot of confusion so they could work behind the scenes. And when you see what's going on, you see the Black Caucus, for example, is not representing Black people, but they're representing LGBTQIA plus as a dangerous cult. You will find that same LGBTQIA as a dangerous cult is also with the same situation with white people, Jewish people, and everybody else. Now, the site, LGBTQIA site, some years ago when I was out in Hollywood, was claiming that 8 or 9 out of every 10 people involved in all aspects of Hollywood were on board with them. And they noted that almost 80% of the ones that were actively involved were also Jewish. They made that claim. So the problem is that when we blame Jews as a categorical group, that's not quite correct, and that is a deliberate smokescreen that's been thrown out there, because what our problem is LGBTQIA that is an essence behind most of the mess we've got in this country. And they have claimed Black people, Jewish people, red people, brown people, and yellow people. And they have propagandized us into thinking a hell of a lot of what's going wrong stems from the core groups that have nothing to do with that. And we miss what they're doing. Like right now, the government is threatening to break down because they aren't funded. I can guarantee you that it's going to be unfunded for a while, and there'll be a lot of confusion. But if you check out the congressional record, you will discover that a whole lot of LGBTQIA plus interests are still being dealt with in committees and other places, while everybody thinks the government is in chaos. Every time they engineer that, they get on it and they start plotting, planning, and scheming. And we wind up with stuff coming out of it like the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill that doesn't have a damn thing to do with lynching, but very much with intersecting American federal law with sexual identification. See, we have to be careful. One of the propaganda techniques is to confuse your target so he blames the wrong person. Now, you pick somebody that does have some culpability to blame, but you put more on their shoulders than is ought to be the case, so you can keep them from finding out what you are really about. And 50 years ago, I heard them plotting this. They said they were going to do it. They were going to turn Black people against themselves, Jewish people against themselves, Protestants against themselves, Protestants against Jews, Black folk against everybody. And meanwhile, they'd work their mischief. BLM, Black Lives Matter, until some of us on here right now, including me, started doing this, tweeting about it several years ago. They had this la-di-da mantra. First thing they had up there, we believe And what was the first point? We believe in the destruction of the traditional nuclear family. We believe in ending cisgender privilege, that's normal privilege in the family. We believe in removing age as a consent factor in sexual activity. And they said this was Black Lives Matter. So when people got mad at Black Lives Matter for all of these burnings, minor lootings, and all of this minor level get out of hand bit around the country, it was actually LGBTQIA plus behind it. They say still on their site, we are an LGBTQIA plus affiliate. If you send $1 to us, 1/3 goes to us, 1/3 goes to LGBTQIA plus, and 1/3 goes to Act Blue, which is a Democratic Party fundraising organization. They also say we organize, provide transportation, communications, and logistics for protests and demonstrations. So we are up here in a situation where do we support Black Lives Matter, the organization, who is the antithesis of what we need? And what do we do about people blaming Black Lives Matter as a concept for what these crooks are sitting there doing? And by the way, in the meanwhile, is profitable. They can buy all of these mega value properties in Los Angeles' area. See, it's a game.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I wanted to get to some of the speakers. The Sermon, I'm gonna come to you because you're a new speaker. Then I'm gonna swing to you, Del, then Keisha. Anybody else want to request to come up, do so, because I mean this is not going to be a marathon space, and it's been a very productive 2 hours. So Sermon, did you want to say something?
Sure. I guess I'll touch on the title of the room, and then also want to speak to what the judge talked about with BLM, being that I was a leader within that movement. So first things first. Well, I'll do the BLM stuff first. Judge is absolutely correct. As a Black man, a heterosexual Black man who led the movement in Atlanta, I had to go up against the LGBT community with locally, but then also once I started to be the dominating face, the Black Lives Matter quickly assembled a team quickly because they did not want a Black man in a major market, especially in the Black gay community. Well, you know, Atlanta's known to be gay. So they had to quickly assemble a team to kind of overpower my voice. That didn't work. Some of the things that they would do is they were secretly organized against me, sending out press releases, things like that to the media, and different threats, threatening letters to different politicians. If you were seen working with me, or you would be labeled as homophobic, blah, 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 because that was the label that they tried to put on me. So yeah, judges are absolutely correct. BLM, I'm telling you out of my damn mouth, is not what people think it is. It is a LGBT-based organization. When you look at the founders, 2 of the women are lesbians or bisexual. The other one is a Nigerian woman. Okay, they are not for Black American people. That is a fact. Most of these 3 founders, they have a separate organization in conjunction with the BLM organization. So they have an organization called BAJI, BAJI. It's like Black Immigrant Justice Institute or something like that. And there's some other organizations that they actually run. So there's that. Judge, I'm also the same guy who the government alleges I have a pending federal case out of the state of Ohio, the Northern District of Ohio, for allegedly stealing funds from BLM. So I'm that guy. I'm the nephew of Justice Alan Page, Supreme Court Justice, former Supreme Court Justice in Minnesota Vikings. So with that, let me get to the title of the room. We can talk all day about the BLM stuff. Are we headed towards World War III? Listen, it's given that. Okay, using Black AAVE, it's given that. It's given all of that. You know, Black Americans, I do want to stress this. This war, in my opinion, has nothing to do with Black people in America. This is between white folks and another group of people fighting overseas. This has nothing to do with us. Now, I wholeheartedly believe that, and I knew it before it was going to happen, that America was going to find a way to meddle into foreign affairs and to send money abroad, right? There's a whole lot of money being shoved out from the Americans' pockets to all these other nations. Meanwhile, black folks can't even get nothing for ourselves. We can't get no reparations. We ain't got no improved communities. Our schools are still piss poor. You know, when it comes to black folks getting anything that's tangible, we've always been put on the back burner, told to wait till the next election cycle. Well, if you give me one more Democratic senator, y'all remember that. And if you didn't vote for me, you ain't black, right? So when it comes to getting tangibles for black Americans, we have not gotten that. We was told we've always been told, Judge, that there's no money. Danny, but we saw trillions of dollars be flipped over during the pandemic, during COVID. Then we saw money go to Ukraine, billions of dollars. Accidental 600 million went over to Ukraine, right? And one of the Ukrainian top military officials stole $1.3 million. Okay, so at the end of the day, this ain't got nothing to do with us. And I want black folk to understand what's happening abroad, but don't give it too much energy. Understand what's happening, because Judge, I don't know if y'all remember, about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, there was the conflict started up again. So this is some stuff that ain't got nothing to do with us. I think America is a damn Karen. That B word needs to mind her business and stop meddling into other people's personal affairs. We need to worry about the people here. Right now, immigration, because immigration there's a great influx in immigration right now, where folks have literally walked over to the border. They didn't run, they didn't sneak over here. They walked over here brazenly, right? And now we got a bunch of people in this country who are going to propagate shit and create potential wars here or domestic terroristic actions here. So that is the price we pay by electing and voting people blindly. Vote blue no matter who. So you got Sleepy Joe up in office who has literally worked to undermine several different states like Texas. When Texas was trying to protect their borders, Biden sent Border Patrol in there to cut the barbed wire. Biden sent his DOJ to sue the Texan government because they had the buoys in the water, right? So again, just pay attention. Don't give it too much attention in terms of supporting one side or the other. It is my official position, I'll land with this, that may there be peace in the Middle East. May there be peace in Israel. May there be peace with the Palestinians and Gaza Strip, right? But in terms of who's wrong or who's right, that I would be out of pocket to try to weigh in, because I don't have enough information to understand the historical or know the historical complexities of that matter. So I'm going to withhold judgment. Just may there be peace, and I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Dell, and before you start speaking, Dell, I just want to let people know I like having these type of discussions, but what I'm starting to see, especially on YouTube and other social media platforms, a little bit on X, is that there's a lot of shadow banning, is a lot of suppressing, there's a lot of not wanting to monetize. Advertisers intentionally don't monetize or place their ads on certain videos when you're talking about objective content. So I do have a website, and I'm asking people to go and sign up to the mailing list so that I could start doing live shows via that website, so it could be uncensored. And it's therealdananetwork.com. But starting next week, when we do the Twitter space, I officially be promoting it and pushing it out there. So I just, trying to be more of an independent content creator and not rely on these media platforms. Dale.
Let me ask a question. I'm
Okay.
having a problem. Ordinarily, when somebody's speaking, it indicates that they're speaking. What's happening on my phone is you're just disappearing off of the whole front. In other words, your picture goes away and I'm not seeing who's speaking.
You probably need to do the
Yeah,
update, Judge.
What's
You
that?
yeah,
probably
it
need to
could be
update the
that.
app.
No, I'm just saying it's all up to date. I'm just saying that just started happening about 10 minutes ago, I was noticing.
Well, either you need to update
Mhm.
the app or you have too much stuff on your phone.
I did update the app, so I'm just saying I most recently did it late last night. They gave me an opportunity to do that. But what I'm saying is,
Well, it could be
who
you do have a lot of stuff in your phone, Judge, but also because you are who you are, it's other things that do play a part. So
like
yeah,
right now, you are the host, right?
yeah, and you're the
I'm
co-host.
supposed to get the little flashing, it looks like the little triangle reverses with the dots. When you speak, it's supposed to go to you. It's not.
Oh, I don't know. It could be a Wi-Fi issue as well. But let me go to Dell. Go ahead, Dell. Can you
Okay.
imagine?
Hi. Yeah, that's gonna be my final comment because I got a meeting to jump into right away. Just kind of, again, kind of reiterating, when it comes down to like a lot of the situation, we end up like what the judge was saying. You see a select group sort of working together, and this is kind of the tactic that they will do. Like they will have a black person come in paid or whatever the case that's cooperating with these other people to go in and do things to black people that are wrong. They'll get, a white person to go to white people. They'll get an Asian person to go to the Asian person. And that's kind of how they work because you're more likely to trust the person that looks like you. And so they'll always send somebody in to bend you over. And I think we need to start like paying attention to more about those things because those are the people that we have to worry about, the people that are there in it for themselves, right? The average person, I mean, a lot of people are indoctrinated to do things they don't even realize because when you're watching stuff on the television, for example, a lot of these things, if you really pay attention to what's on TV, a lot of the times they make black people look like criminals or all of these things. So people have this in the back of their mind. And they see on social media, a lot of the times they're showing a lot of black people that are doing all kinds of nonsense so that it's wiring you to think that a black person, every black person is going to be that way. And it may not consciously think that way, but in the back of your mind, it's wiring your mind. Like I know plenty of people that don't watch TV that are on the wrong side of things because they know what it's there to do. And so most of the people, you can't even blame them because they've been programmed from birth and don't know any better. They think that they're doing what's right, but they don't realize they got a bad set of instructions. The worst things you got to worry about are the people that deliberately know what they're doing and they're doing it anyway. Those are the kinds of people that are the most dangerous. And then the people that should be on your side that look like you that are working with those people to bend you over because if you'll sell out your brother, who you're not going to sell out. And this is the kinds of people that you're working against, are people that are willing to sell out their own kind and anybody else, and they have no loyalty to anybody, and they're all coming together so that they can just do whatever they can and do it in the most disgusting manner.
Mhm.
And so I'll kind of land my plane there. More focused on the people who are doing the wrong intentionally than all the other average people, because if you get angry at the average person, you'll spend your entire life being mad. And I'd rather focus on getting ahead than worrying about some person who doesn't really know any better and worry about the guy that's intentionally, deliberately doing what he can to destroy me because he knows what he's doing is wrong and is doing it anyway. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to go to Bit Papa, and anybody else want to request to come up, please do so now because we're going to eventually start closing out. And then people who are already up here, if you want to speak again, just raise your hands. Go ahead, Bit Papa. And then Senku. Okay, he fell off. So Senku.
Really just to go along with where did he go? Well, he left. Well, really just to go along with it, he was saying it's just you gotta pay attention to the way people have been fed instructions. Like he said, most of the time people don't know what's really going on because of the stuff they've been fed. And the media tells you guys a lot of stuff before it really happens. It's the law of the universe. It has to be shown to you before it actually happens to avoid any accountability on the people doing it. So if you pay attention to what's actually going on around you, what you take in every day as far as music, TV shows, music videos, especially that, even so far as like mobile phones and video games, they tell you a lot of stuff. You just have to be able to pick apart the clues and see what they're trying to piece together for you. Sometimes it takes years. There's movies that have been out for 30, 40 years and they're just now starting to make sense because people are now rewatching them. And I'm saying that to say this is just you can't just be oblivious to everything they put in front of you guys. Watch everything with at least the tiniest grain of salt.
Yeah. All right. So I don't see any more hands or requests. So Judge, do you want to just start closing us out? We did a little over 2 hours, which were good. I think this was
Here,
productive.
I have to make a
Go ahead.
real quick. Tomorrow I'll have my Twitter space going on at 10:30 my time, Central Time. So if you guys want to join in, I send a copy and I post it out to your accounts and everything else. So please join if you have the time tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Central Time.
And what is the title?
My title is called Zionism is the same as Zionism is the same as white supremacy, fact or fiction.
Okay. All right.
So check it out.
All right. Well, if you want to put it in a jumbotron and put it in a comment section as well, so people know to hit the reminder. So
yeah.
Okay. All right, Judge. So this was a very good discussion. Thank you for going back into time, all the way back to biblical times, and really, I would say you kind of summed it up, and you honestly you could do probably 2-3 hours just talking about the biblical time period, right? What was going on there then.
Surely.
But the way you laid it out perfectly, and then the names you threw out with the books and the references, I think is very good because this space is recorded. Go back, listen, write it down, and go read up on it. So I really appreciate your time today, and I know you have things to do as well. And we will be back every Tuesday, and if he has time anytime during the week, maybe he'll do a pop-up Twitter space, but every Tuesday, and then starting next week, well, really towards this week, and definitely every Twitter space, I'm going to be promoting a website as well. So please close us out, Judge.
Think very carefully. Think long before you get fired up over some of what you read in the newspapers, the periodicals, on social media, and you view on television, because they aren't helping you. They are just trying to get you to get an emotional response to something that ought to be critically analyzed. Now, that said, take everything with a grain of salt and find out why something's going on, not just necessarily what appears to be going on. And remember, there's this thing we have a saying, what goes around comes around. So I don't know if it's applicable here, but just keep that in mind and analyze what you see and what you hear with that principle. So,
and one more thing.
Great day.
Wait, one more thing. What is, and just elaborate real quickly, the importance of knowing the history.
Yeah. And you might, if you want a deep research, look up who Pharaoh Akhenaten was and what he decided to do about revising Egyptian religion. You know his son, King Tutankhamun, who didn't make it past 9 and apparently also about 70 years later, you know about Ramesses the Great, aka Ramesses II. Learn what Akhenaten's palace guard, which according to the reports that they made was primarily Hebrew, may have been influenced to adopt when they were exposed to this monotheistic Pharaoh, and see what that has to do with what follows therefrom and whether that led to ethnic cleansing. And then think about when Moses comes down from the mountaintop and he sees his followers worshiping Baal, who are is one of the pantheon of gods in the Middle East, which has an Egyptian counterpart. So see what's going on and try to read between the lines. And one other little clue to think about: nomads usually tell time because they roam and they don't have fixed points to study such things and keep track of such things as years. They usually think of time in terms of passage of the moons. It has been many moons since I have seen you. Same thing with Native Americans. So when you hear time periods in the Bible, instead of taking the time period as a year, take it as a month. So when you get a total, divided by 12 and see what you get in terms of years. It might be a little bit more reasonable and palatable to the modern mind when you do it that way and think about mistranslation and the fact that the accounts are of events that took place 1,500, 2,000 years before they were written down in the first century. So
let me real quick. Do you have on your bolster? Do you have it on your bolster right now? Something.
Bolster?
What you know? What you keep your weight in? Yeah, the bolster. The strap thing that you have around your shoulder sometimes. Do you have that on?
Oh, you're talking about holster.
Holsters, yes, sorry, holster.
Yes. Oh,
yes, yeah, because I hear the leather. Yes. I'm like, what is that leather cringing? But okay, I just want to
always.
He always stay ready. And if you don't know what a holster is, guys, read between the lines. Judge always stay ready. All right.
You may have to get your John Wick on. Okay.
Right. All right. Great space. Next Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe a pop-up, but definitely next Tuesday. Oh, and then go to The Real Dana on YouTube because we are doing a live show Thursday night. Going to talk about more politics. And I'm going to see how the viewership look. I don't know. But yeah, I think they still got your name listed as public enemy number 1 with that with the federal government. So
who is that?
Huh?
I got interference.
I said your name. I said we're doing the show this Thursday on YouTube, The Real Dana, the Man Up Show on YouTube at The Real Dana. So that'll be Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central. So put that in your calendar, Judge. I said, and I want to see what the viewership is going to be like because I believe that the federal government still has your name as public enemy number 1 in their system. So and I'm not being funny. It's like you key, but it's yeah, but you're serious. Like that is a thing. So all right. Thank you everybody for coming in. And thank you to all the speakers. I really appreciate you guys. Share this space. It is recorded and we'll definitely be back here next week, Tuesday. And then check us out Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube at The Real Dana. And have a wonderful day.
All right.